Following a years-long political deadlock that included 2 failed elections in addition to an ongoing corruption trial, Benjamin Netanyahu has somehow managed to keep his post as Israeli Prime Minister. His next plan of action: to annex occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, parts of the occupied West Bank and all of the Jordan Valley, beginning July the 1st. Welcome to Palestine Files. I'm your host, Wissam Bahrani. On this episode, we're going to focus on Israel's official declaration to seize even more Palestinian territory. Despite the fact that Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank have been expanding over many decades and the Jordan Valley as well as occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, are under Israeli military control, Tel Aviv has set a dangerous precedent by officially declaring its position to annex the Palestinian territories. There is now real concern that this will lead to more violence and instability in the occupied territories. The Palestinian Authority says it is ending all agreements with Israel and the United States.
فنكون في حل من كل تلك الاتفاقات والتفاهمات إذا أعلنت الحكومة الإسرائيلية عن ضم أي جزء من أراضينا المحتلة، وسنحمل الحكومتين الأمريكية والإسرائيلية كل ما يترتب على ذلك من آثار أو تداعيات خطيرة.
أنا باعتقادي إذا أقدموا على أي خطوة في الضم الجزئي أو الكلي، هذا بالضرورة سيعني إنهاء أي إمكانية لتحقيق اتفاق تفاوضي بين الجانبين في المستقبل. هذا أمر كارثي، وهذا برنامج كارثي في الحقيقة، وعلى دول العالم أن تتحد لتشكيل ائتلاف يمنع الضم.
The plan is also in direct contravention of international law that views all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank as illegal. However, Israel's Prime Minister, speaking at his corruption trial, says he won't miss a historic opportunity. Benjamin Netanyahu says Palestinians need to acknowledge that Israel controls security in all areas in the occupied territories. The annexation comes with the blessing of the United States.
As for the annexation in the West Bank, the Israelis will ultimately make those decisions. That's an Israeli decision, and we will work closely with them to share with them our views of this in a private setting.
Washington gave Tel Aviv the green light to press ahead with the move following the so-called deal of the century. Palestinians have already boycotted the current US administration as a mediator, saying it is too biased in favor of the regime. Observers say Israel's plans are a historic recipe for disaster in a conflict that many say is the root source of instability in the region. Even the online community expressed absolute disgrace over Israel's annexation plans. Let's start with We Are Palestine initiative, who says Israel wants to annex the West Bank during the COVID-19 pandemic. They were never in it for peace. The US government funds terrorists in Israel. Zionism is terrorism. American West Indies Trading Company says that's because Israel owns the US, so the Zionists have infiltrated almost every country and every level of society. But they have exposed themselves, and the truth will set us free. Tikkun Olam says as Israel prepares to annex Jordan Valley and 30% of Palestine, world bodies, human rights NGOs and governments must mount massive sanctions campaign targeting Israel. That's a policy that could work to stop the annexation. Sarah Wilkinson says join hands, says Palestinian resistance movement, and confront Israel over its criminal plan to illegitimately annex Palestinian land. It's theft. Resistance is being mentioned as one way also to thwart this plan of annexation. And Stephen Lawrence George says, where's the outrage for this hypocrisy? We don't know, Stephen. We don't know. Nicholas Ford says Israel is about to annex the West Bank despite opposition from the UN and 150 countries. This is the biggest land theft in history and no one is talking about it. Free Palestine. And finally, the last one on this monitor here from Angela by Binox, who says we have to realize that Trump is actually fulfilling the nationalist agenda for criminal Netanyahu by making Jerusalem Al-Quds capital and helping taking over the West Bank. He's fulfilling an agenda for Israel that will cause a further imbalance of power, tipping the scales to Netanyahu. Now, this is also the platform that gives the Palestinians themselves a voice. That's why we're heading to the capital of Palestine, occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, to hear from them.
إسرائيل أصلا هي مسيطرة على كافة مناطق الفلسطينية، بالتالي عملية الضم راح تكون تتويج وشيء رسمي، لكن هو يؤشر على خطورة التفكير الإسرائيلي المتنامي، إنه إحنا كفلسطينيين مش موجودين في حسابات الإسرائيليين، وهذا شيء مقلق ومخيف، وبتطلب منا إحنا كفلسطينيين إنه نكون على قدر المسؤولية. مطلوب من القيادات وحتى من المستوى الشعبي ما بيزبط يقول انه انا ما لي علاقه، انه هي القيادات السياسيه شغل القيادات السياسيه، لا، لانه انت كفلسطيني راح تكون متضرر وراح تكون تدفع ثمن.
طبعا بيأثر على كل النواحي، هذا بيأثر بده ياخذ ارضنا، اسرائيل مش لازم تاخذ ارضنا، لازم تطلع منها واحنا ناخذها ونتوحد مع بعضنا غزة والضفة.
أعتبر كمواطن فلسطيني قرار ضم الضفة الغربية هو محاولة نهائية لتصفية القضية الفلسطينية، خاصة المحافظات الشمالية، وفي ظل وجود الأزمة الاستثنائية اللي بمر فيها شعبنا من حالة الانقسام، وبالتالي الأمور لما بتترابط مع بعضها بتصير في تهديد جدي لقضيتنا الوطنية الفلسطينية ومستقبل قيام الدولة الفلسطينية.
هاي أرضنا، أرض جدودنا وأرض آبائنا، شايف، أرض عربية إسلامية، هذول أجوا استولوا عليها بالقوة وبالعنفوان. طبعا أنا بطالب كفلسطيني وكعربي وكمسلم، بطالب الشعب الفلسطيني يكون إيد واحدة في الضفة وغزة. ثانيا إنه يكونوا العرب والمسلمين كلهم معانا. بعدين الرأي العالمي اللي اعترف في إسرائيل، أول ما اعترف في إسرائيل هي هيئة الأمم، وهيئة الأمم معناته إذن هي إذا ما وقفت ضد إسرائيل هي مؤيدة ومشاركة لهذا الضم، ويجب علينا كفلسطينيين إنه نقاوم بكل الوسائل والطرق المتاحة لنا.
لازم يكون في قرار جدي شعبي على المستوى العام، على المستوى الحكومي، على المستوى النضالي باتجاه هاي، لأنه هذا احتلال يمارس كل أشكال البلطجة والزعرنة والدموية في حقنا، وإحنا قاعدين بنحكي يا عالم طلوا علينا وطب السلام. مش اتفاقيات سلام، هي اتفاقيات سلام هي يعني اتفاق السلام يكون بين طرفين اثنين بيحترموا هالاتفاقيات هاي. احنا فيش اتفاقيات سلام، هي اتفاقية على أساس أنها اتفاقية سلام، وطبعا إسرائيل ضربتها كلها في عرض الحائط، مش ضايل ولا أي اتفاقية نلغيها أكيد، مع أنه تلتغي بكل تفاصيلها. هو الرد لكل ما يقوم به الاحتلال أول إشي إنهاء الانقسام، الوحدة الوطنية، نتوحد جميعنا تحت بند فلسطين، وبناء عليها راح تلاقي مليون حل في هذا الجانب، بس طول ما احنا مقسمين فيش حلول كلها فردية.
There's been an absolute string of continuous international backlash over Israel's plans to annex Palestinian territories. For example, Iran has condemned such plans. So have the European Union, the United Nations, the Arab League, the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council, and the UK, among many other international organizations and countries. It doesn't look like Israel plans on heeding to such international demands and has promised to go on, press ahead with its illegal annexation. This is how international media has reacted. Khalid Barakat is a Palestinian writer, journalist and activist, and he joins us now. Mr. Barakat, welcome. Walk us through, if you can, Israel's annexation plan. What does it signify?
Well, it just signifies that Israel is doing its dirty business as usual, grabbing and stealing more Palestinian land and driving Palestinians outside of their land, especially in the West Bank. This annexation plan will basically have Israel steal 1/3 of the West Bank. And not to mention that all of this area that they are planning to annex are an agriculture area that belongs to Palestinians, which is going to have a tremendous negative impact on Palestinians in general, not just those who will lose their land, but also the Palestinian society at large. But this is also a U.S.-Israel plan with an utter silence from the Arab reactionary regimes, especially Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and others. They are watching and seeing this, and actually under the table they are giving their blessing. This is the same camp, U.S., Israel, Arab reactionary regimes, trying to liquidate the cause and the question of Palestine by implementing the Zionist same policies, more land for Israel, less land for Arabs, less Arabs in Palestine and in the West Bank in particular.
Right. Israel is also receiving a fair amount of international condemnation, barring the three Persian Gulf kingdoms that you noted. How do you see Tel Aviv's response to that? The regime is known to have repeatedly ignored international laws.
Well, of course, what Israel is doing goes against all international law. I mean, this is not new. Since the establishment of Israel, and all Israeli policies are being neglecting international law, disregard of international law. They don't care about the United Nations resolutions. They don't really give it any weight. They implement their policies regardless of what United Nations say and do. And that is very dangerous, because what are they doing in reality is that they are imposing by force an occupation that is going to not just leave Palestinians without land, but also leave Palestinians without any aspirations and ability to control their own lives. The international law at its large been siding with Palestinian people and recognizing Palestinian people's rights, but this is not the same thing as implementing these resolutions as they done with other cases around the world. With Israel, it's always an exception, because the United States is always backing Israel and covering Israel and arming Israel with the veto power in United Nations and international arenas.
Khalid Barakat, a journalist and activist, thank you very much indeed for your insights. We're going to take a short break, but stay exactly where you are, because we're going to be right back with the rest of the show. Israel's annexation plans have been roundly condemned by the international community. The Islamic Republic of Iran says the regime's expansionism has been encouraged by what Tehran describes as Trump's shameful deal of the century. The United Nations envoy for the Middle East has also slammed Tel Aviv.
The continuing threat of annexation by Israel of parts of the West Bank would constitute a most serious violation of international law, deal a devastating blow to the two-state solution, close the door to a renewal of negotiations, and threaten efforts to advance regional peace and our broader efforts to maintain international peace and security.
Mladenov has urged the Security Council to back a push by UN Chief Antonio Guterres against the move. However, such measures by the Council is unlikely, as it has to be agreed by consensus, and the United States has always shielded its ally Israel from any action.
This Council cannot dictate the end to this conflict. We can only encourage the parties to sit down to determine how they wish to make progress.
Meanwhile, the European Union has joined the chorus of condemnation.
Cela serait, je crois, extrêmement dommageable et constituerait pour nous, je le dis très clairement, une violation grave de l'un des principes permettrait toute justification d'occupation de tel ou tel territoire par la force, ce qui n'est pas acceptable pour nous d'une part, et d'autre part, cela mettrait en cause de manière irréversible la solution des deux États et la recherche d'une paix durable.
The French Foreign Minister says the bloc is considering some form of joint action should Tel Aviv implement the annexation.
Nous avons depuis quelques jours organisé de nombreuses rencontres visio avec plusieurs de nos collègues, d'abord avec nos collègues européens. Et nous sommes en train de travailler avec l'Italie, l'Allemagne, l'Espagne, plus quelques États membres affinitaires, Luxembourg, l'Irlande, je ne les cite pas tous, pour aboutir à une action commune. Je ne peux pas encore vous dire de quelle manière nous allons le faire, mais nous travaillons ensemble pour une action commune de prévention et éventuellement de riposte si d'aventure cette décision était prise.
Israeli Premier Netanyahu says a new cabinet deal he clinched with former opposition leader Benny Gantz stipulates the annexation process will begin from July the 1st. Khalid Hijazi is a Palestinian activist with Al Auda, and he joins us now. Now, Mr. Hijazi, being a Palestinian yourself, if I can start with getting your viewpoint on Israel's annexation plan.
Israel as a settler colonialist Zionist entity from its inception has been annexing, appropriating Palestinian land. Not a day that has ever passed for the past 72 years without Israel either appropriating land for either for security checkpoints, for bypass roads, for illegal settlements, and all of that. So if Israel is to annex this 60% of the West Bank, what will it signify for the Palestinian people? First, Palestinian people now, as of now, comprise the majority of the population if we are to consider in all of historic Palestine between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. So you have the majority of the people, the Palestinians, will be living or will only have access to about 10% of historic Palestine. So 10% of the land inhabited by the majority of the people who live in historic Palestine. So very much like South Africa in a way. So Palestinians will be living in disconnected Bantustans, and so what will happen after? It will further weaken the society and the economy of the Palestinian people. Life will become unbearable, will become almost impossible to maintain a viable life in the West Bank and on all of Palestine.
Will the Palestinian Authority actually implement the cancellation of the security agreements with Israel? We've heard similar words in the past with a lack of action on the ground.
Yes, actually, I will have to quote Ghassan Kanafani, a Palestinian writer and thinker who was violently, horribly assassinated by Israel in 1973. He said one time that negotiating or making peace between the colonized and the colonizer is like having a knife against someone's throat. So I'm hoping that Israel's recent decision to annex the majority of the West Bank will make the Palestinian Authority realize or rethink its position and the mistake that it has done by agreeing to make peace with its captors.
Khalid Hijazi, Palestinian activist, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, we sat with Jamaad Jum'a. He is the coordinator of the national campaign to resist Israel's apartheid wall and settlements, and he believes that the regime has already started the annexation process.
The land that Israel want to annex in the West Bank is already marked by the wall since 2002. They started marking it, which is built mainly on the Oslo map, area A and B and C, where they will suffocate the Palestinian communities in area A and B and isolate area C, which is more than 62% of the West Bank is going to be under the Israeli annexation plans. They already started since then. They started to de-development these areas and to put more pressure on the Palestinians who's living in that areas, not allowing the Palestinian Authority to work in these areas, to have any investment, to do any development, as well as also the international donors. They also didn't allow any serious projects that can do any change to the Palestinian life there, and they started even the pressure on the Palestinians to leave, which is mainly they're pressuring them in their main rights. Of course, this annexation, when you talk about 62% of the Palestinian land, you are talking about Palestinian resources. It is the agricultural land, it is the water resources, the open areas where you can build industrial zones. It is the areas that connecting the Palestinian main cities and villages together. So without Area C, there is no Palestinian existence, in fact, because you will be suffocated and you'll be under the mercy of Israel. They are the one controlling these blockades that they're creating by the wall, which we call them the Bantustans and the apartheid system in general. So without Area C, they are not going to be, so this is the main effect, politically and economically and socially on the Palestinians. The other thing, there is more than 255 communities living in Area C. Most of these communities are under threat. And most of them, they have orders of demolition for their communities. And they are fighting. And it's our main, as the Palestinians and the Palestinian movements, our main aim is how we can to support their steadfastness of their land, how we can support their resistance and not to feel forced to leave at the end. So the battle is coming if Israel started to do any annexation for these areas. It needs a Palestinian strategic decision, be forced to do that. So I think that the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian leadership in general don't have choices. If Israel went into this, they have to immediately start denying and declaring that all the agreements with Israel is not valid anymore, and this should start immediately, stop all kind of coordination with Israel, either security or economically or all these issues. And I think the other thing is also to call for the international intervention.
After decades of promising the international community that it is not an expansionist entity, the Zionist occupation has made July 1 the beginning of its showdown to annex all lands it began occupying in 1967. Amidst the global condemnation, the regime has defied calls to abandon its illegal theft of the land of the indigenous. That's it for today's episode. See you next time.